Hello and welcome to the Grove Church Podcast. I'm Charlie Lofton, the lead pastor there, and we are so glad that you're joining us. Whether you are a member and you're just catching up on a sermon that you missed, or you're someone who's brand new, we are really glad that you are joining us. And if you are new in some way, and I know that a lot of people will do that, will listen to sermons first before they visit, I want you to know that we would love to meet you at any point. You can join us live in our services on Sunday, 9 and 10:30, or our streaming service at 10:30. Either way, we would love to be able to get to know you. And regardless of why you are here listening to this sermon today, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, good morning. If you are new, I'm Charlie, the lead pastor here, and really glad you are all worshiping with us today. So glad that you are here. And we are wrapping up a series today in 1 John. So looking forward to that. And then next week, we will be starting a series in the 10 Commandments. We're going to spend a good portion of the summer doing that, just kind of talking about it. It's kind of always been a big deal culturally. It was obviously a big deal in the Old Testament, but like, what is its significance to us? What is the power? Why those 10? So we're going to spend some time with that this summer, and we'll kick that off next Sunday. So I encourage you to come back and be a part of that. And also, I just encourage you to spend some time praying today and this week. A lot of people experienced a lot of loss yesterday. Some people in our church, we know for sure, are without power. And so looking for opportunities to help and serve them or help and serve anybody that we can. And so just please be prayerful. And then let's all look for opportunities if they come for us to be able to kind of love on and serve our community over the next few days. And this week, I know for a lot of you, this last week or two has been kind of a big deal. We have a lot of seniors in high school. We celebrated last week, just kind of all the different people, kids from our church, either in high school or college that had graduated. I got to go to a high school graduation party for some friends of ours, their son. It was kind of good. It's kind of has it all in my head. And some of you are younger and can remember this way better than I can. But even for me, 34 years ago, it's kind of got me remembering kind of what it was like, that transition from high school to college. You know, the way that I grew up, very small town, very kind of strict, kind of narrow upbringing, one way of thinking about things politically, religiously, morally, just kind of one way of doing things. And, I didn't spend much of my teenage years kind of questioning any of that. I was kind of a go along to get along kind of guy, but in the back of my mind, I had a lot of questions about it. And there was something about that drive, a 3-hour drive, from El Dorado, Arkansas to Conway, Arkansas, just even the fact that I was driving myself in my own car as my parents in the van were bringing all of the stuff or whatever. Again, I'm thinking, it's interesting how we even say this, right? Feel this feeling of independence and like, bro, independence, your parents are in the van behind you with all your stuff. Yeah. I was naive, but I thought I had a lot of independence, right? And just this idea of, now I'm going to get to choose. What I do on any given day is going to be largely up to me. And who I am, what I'm going to believe. And really for the first time in my life, I'm hearing a lot of different voices. Some of them, I kind of would keep some of the things I grew up with, and I would go there. I was ready to fight. We were conservative, and this was a liberal place, and I was going to fight anybody who said anything. But some of it was like, well, actually, that kind of makes sense. Some of the morals I brought with me, I took with me. Some of them I left somewhere around Sheridan, I don't know, Little Rock, somewhere around in there. And I'm just kind of becoming my own person. And really for the first time in my life, really making decisions, really hearing different voices and making a decision for myself. Who am I going to be? Where do I believe life is found? What is right? What is wrong? How should I live with minimal restraints in my life? How do I want to live? And so we've been studying through the book of 1 John over the last several weeks. And this is a group of mostly house churches in Ephesus that John is writing to here. And so at some point, John, some other people kind of come there and are teaching them about who Jesus is. And for some of this, all very, very new. Maybe some people probably there with a Jewish background, some with kind of more of a polytheistic Roman background. And for the first time really in their lives, they're hearing this new idea about Jesus Christ and about his life and his death and how they can be reconciled to God through the love and the work of Jesus Christ. And they give their heart and their lives to this. But then sometime after, this other group comes in. And if you've been around with us these last few weeks, you've heard this. This other group of people have come in called the Gnostics. And they have a very different idea. They kind of, in their mind, they want to build on what they already believe about Jesus and just tweak a few things. And they come in here with this idea. It's like, hey, you've heard that the God that created the world is good. Is not good. The physical world is all bad, and the one who created it is bad. And there is a God, a deeper God behind that God, and the physical world is bad. And so Jesus is a powerful prophet and messenger, but he would not become, the Son of God would not become a fleshly person. Like it would never be like that, because that's evil. And so reimagining who God is, reimagining who Jesus is, and then saying, hey, and really, let me tell you where life is. Life is not just about putting your faith in Jesus. Real life comes when you have this kind of moment of enlightenment, this epiphany, this gnosis kind of moment, this deeper knowledge moment that you'll have. And if you will pursue that, something will happen to you, and you'll experience this kind of new level of knowledge and understanding. And now here they are. There's who they were. There's who John is telling them to be. There's the Gnostics coming in, and now John is coming back and saying, hey, it's not this, it's this. And for the last several weeks, a pretty decently sized letter, John has been kind of slowly walking them through all of these different ideas that they're being taught and reminding them, refreshing them on the idea of who God is, who Jesus is, and where life is really found. And now they've got a decision to make. And so as John is wrapping up this letter here in chapter 5, we're kind of going to get really his closing argument. We've been talking about a lot of these different things, and he's now going to kind of put it together for them very succinctly, I believe. You guys are really asking some pretty big, deep questions. Where is life? And once I get there, how do I live it? And this is kind of how John ends up here. We're going to be at the very end of 1 John chapter 5. We're going to start at 11 and go to the end, but we'll kind of break it down into 3 different chunks here. 1 John chapter 5, starting verse 11. And this is the testimony. God has given us eternal life, and this life is in his Son. Whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son of God does not have life. I write these things to you who believe in the name of the Son of God, so that you may know that you have eternal life. That really is kind of the thesis for the whole book. Now, here's what I'm writing. I'm writing these things to you. Because there are some of you, what you do, you believe in the name of the Son of God. You believe in the name and the person of Jesus Christ. And I'm writing these things to you so that you will know. And we've seen this word so many times. So you'll know. I want you to know. I want you to know. That's what this group is talking about. The hidden knowledge, the deeper knowledge, the secret knowledge, the next level knowledge, there are things out there I can't even describe or explain to you. But once you experience this deeper knowledge, then you'll have this it'll click with you. And then you'll be able to experience life. And so they feel uncertain. Maybe I don't know. And John is coming behind. You can know. You don't have to wonder if you've had the right sort of moment, if you've done the right things, if you have experienced the right things. I'm writing these things to you if you believe in the name of the Son of God. I'm writing them so that you can know that you have eternal life. And this is the testimony. God has given us eternal life. And this life is in his Son. Whoever has the Son has life. Whoever does not have the Son of God does not have life. So at its simplest, I feel like the summary of these few verses, this passage we're going to look at, the whole book life is found in Jesus. This is what he is wanting. There are lots of different places that you can look to find capital L life, meaning, purpose, real life. There's lots of different places to look. And he is telling them, if you want life, life is found in Jesus. If you have Jesus, you have it. If you don't have Jesus, you don't have it. And again, this is in deep contrast for them. Life is not found in some sort of secret knowledge path. There is not some truth that has been hidden to you by the people who are telling you about God. There's not some secret knowledge that's going to click with you that will allow you to really fully understand the way the world and the universe and life works. There are no obstacles here. You have your faith in Jesus. That's where life is. And there's this movement. And if you've been around, we've talked about this, but I want to highlight it again and say it again for people who haven't heard. I believe there is a movement that does not necessarily trace its origins to Gnosticism, but sounds very, very similar. That the thing that is keeping you from being able to experience real life is a deeper truth, a deeper understanding. There is deeper meaning out there. You have been told simplistic things about who God is. You've been told simplistic things about who Jesus is. But once you have this moment and you really realize how this deeper understanding, then you'll know. And then once you know, you'll have the knowledge. And it's built on a lot of pride, a lot of mysticism around kind of secret and deep knowledge. And there's this idea out there that the difference between the people who are really living life and the people who don't, again, is this deeper knowledge that we have that you don't. And honestly, there's a conservative branch to this and there's a liberal branch to this. That somehow the thing that is keeping you from God is you don't know enough. And if you knew what I knew and you knew things like I know things, then you could be okay, but you're just not quite there yet. And I have to admit that I'm actually pretty sensitive to this. This is something I'm actually pretty sensitive to. It's something that is really kind of unsettles me a little bit. Really, I think because of who I am, or maybe more accurately, who I was. And depending on how long you've known me and when you first met me, you would have completely different ideas. There's people here, you haven't even really met me. We've just recently met. You've known me a couple of years. There's some people here that have known us the whole time we've been here. There's people who knew me when I was in college. And depending on how you know me, there's a lot of different ideas about who I am and who I was. I'm telling you, who I was 20 years ago, you'd be like, I don't even recognize that guy. Who I was in college, I don't know if I like that guy. High school, I can say with absolute confidence you would not have liked that guy. That guy was a punk. And that guy was overwhelmingly arrogant. And I've carried that with me for a really long time. And there's this moment for me, it happened my senior year of high school, and it was really kind of this, it really wasn't at the time, but it's really kind of become a real pivotal kind of life change moment for me over time. We had this new teacher that year. He's brand new to the school. He's pretty fresh out of college. He was teaching our Chemistry 2 class. And we had him in Chemistry 1. He was a long-term sub for a few weeks. And so we'd gotten to know him then when he was like 22. And we were 16. And now we're 18 and he's 24. And I don't know what you think about that age gap right now, but it is really, like, at 50, it seems the same. And at 18, we thought the same thing. Well, who is this guy? He's just a guy. He's a kid. He's just like us. We're the same. And so at times we had a really good relationship, but at times it was pretty disrespectful. And there was this thing that we had. There's about 7 or 8 of us here. And again, I'm already hedging a little bit. About 7 or 8 of us in this honors Chemistry 2 class our senior year. And we had this attitude about us. And I'll remember this till the day that I die. He says, you know what y'all's problem is? And I'm like, okay, I'm ready to fight. What? You guys are all intellectual snobs. Never heard that phrase before. And I remember feeling 2 things at the same time. How dare you? And yikes. It was absolutely true. I was better than you because I was smarter than you. My grades were better. My ACT score was better. I was better with words than you were. I was more confident than you were. And all of that was because how much smarter I was than you. And I carried myself with that level of arrogance, and then again kind of bring that with me to college. These professors didn't have anything. You can't tell me anything I don't already know. And if I don't like it, then I'll reject it because I'm smarter than you. I don't care how many degrees you have. And had always just kind of carried myself that really life was found in the pride of what I knew. And the older that I've gotten, I realized that for me was just a different way of me trying to be good enough. You hang around here too long, you'll recognize, man, we're really not into that. We don't believe that this is a place where in order to really have life with God, you got to get good enough first. It's not about works. The gift that God gives through Jesus is free. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to clean yourself up first before God will let you in. All the work that needed to be done was done by Jesus. It's not by you being good enough. And my pride and my good enough was come in being smart enough, smarter. I know more. And there's a lot of pride in that. And so I'm skeptical of it. I'm skeptical of people who seem to find their faith, their hope, and their life in knowing things you don't know, that they don't know. Because a lot of it comes from, again, the simple truths about who God is, about who Jesus Christ is. Oh, it's not that, it's this. And we reject this simplicity. Now, I'm all about learning and knowing, studying. I read a lot. I listen a lot. But it is about learning more about who God is, who Jesus Christ is, not graduating and moving on to some secret, deeper knowledge that casts aside the silliness of the myths about the creation of the world, about God sending his son to become a man, about the death of Jesus Christ and what it can do for you. I want to learn more about that and the significance of it. I'm not going to move on to these hidden truths. And so I just encourage you, the way that John is, just be careful about that. Let us go deep in who God is and who Jesus is. Let's not move past it and kind of build a life of arrogance and pride that we have rejected the simple foundational truths. God created this universe. He loves you, and he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to give you life. We build on that. We do not move from it. And so this is this is the testimony. God has given us life. This life is in his son. In verse 14, this is the confidence we have in approaching God. That if we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of him. So I think we have confidence. You have confidence in approaching God. If you ask anything according to his will, he'll hear you. And if we know that he hears, we know that we will have what we asked of him. Now, buried in there, it's really like you say, bro, it's not buried. It's right there on the top. It's kind of a pretty bold statement that seems to indicate you can pray for anything and you'll get it. And there's a handful of passages that can say something like that. And so right here in this part of the passage, we're going to look again. There's going to be a couple of things that are said that can really kind of trigger a couple of hot button theological debates. And I'm not going to just disregard them. I will come back to them. But I think it is important when we read a passage like this to not read it through the lens of things that Christians now like to argue about. Again, we want to understand it. If something is controversial or there's some, it's difficult to understand, we want to understand it. But let's make sure that we hear the big idea that John is trying to get across to these people and apply that before we kind of get lost in our own kind of musings. Because again, if there are two different ideas of God, there's the God from the Gnostics. There's the God that created the world, the physical world, and that God is bad. He's evil. He's not good, and you should be scared of him. He's not approachable. But then there's the God that's behind that God, and he is mystical and spiritual and aloof, and you can't approach him. So the idea that John is coming in, hey, listen, the God of the universe, you can in fact approach him with confidence. That is the earth-shattering statement that he is making here. There is not some angry God that you need to be scared of, and there is not some aloof God out there who does not care. You can approach the God of the universe with confidence. Why? Because of what Jesus did. You have life in Jesus, and it is not it doesn't matter if you're, quote, good enough. It doesn't matter if you, quote, know enough. It's not about how good you are. It's not about how much you know. It is about what Jesus Christ has done, and you've put your faith in that. And if you've put your faith in him, then you can approach God with confidence. And guess what? You can ask him for things, and he will listen to what you say, and he will respond to what you say. That would have been life-altering for them. And I hope that you can take a moment and allow it to, either for the first time or for the next time, to be life-altering for you. It's not an angry God up there who's just always thinking about how you aren't good enough. And there's not this aloof, mystical God out there who's too busy creating new universes to care about the things that are going on in your life. This big, awesome, almighty, all-powerful God, you can talk to him, and he will listen because of what Jesus Christ has done to bring you to him. Now, he does say, if you ask anything that's in accordance with his will, you can have confidence that you're going to get it, which to me begs a couple of different questions that maybe you have, maybe just kind of immediately pop to you. Basically, if you ask anything according to his will, so if you ask him for something that he wants to give you, you can have confidence that he'll give it to you. First question is, if it's something he wants me to have, why don't I already have it? He's a good God, you say, and if he wants me to have it, if it's in accordance with his will, why would I even have to ask? Or then you might also ask, I feel like there are things that I have asked for that seem aligned with the things that God wants, and I don't get them. What about that? And I would like to suggest that both of these questions really can be answered the same way. Because ultimately what God wants for you, he wants an intimate relationship with you, and he wants to shape you and mold you into the man or woman that he's designed you to be. He wants you to get better. He wants you to be better. He wants you to grow. He wants you to mature. He wants you to cast off sin. He wants you to pursue holiness and righteousness. This is what he wants. And so if he wants that sort of intimacy, then there's something that is built in the asking. And in growing in that confidence and recognizing, hey, I reached out to God and he did it. There's a depth that comes from that. And there's times you ask and it's like, I'm here and God, this is what I'm asking for. And this seems really in line with who you are, with what you want from me. And this is what I want. And it doesn't happen. What do we do with that? Again, God's got a different idea. And I've walked with God long enough. And I've seen this enough that I can feel like I can fairly confidently say that all of the times that I've been here asking God for this, one of two things tends to happen. He sends me over here, and I end up here, and I think, thank you for not sending me here. This was better. Or we go this way and end up here. And there was something here probably that needed to be avoided. And he took me around it. And the whole time, building the intimacy and trust. This came up yesterday when I was hanging out with our friends at this graduation party. The house that we used to own before we moved here. It's been a while since I've whined about it. To catch you up, some of you on this. The house we lived in before we moved to Fayetteville 14 plus years ago, it didn't sell for 9.5 years after we moved here. And it was awful. And I would complain about it all the time. And you would laugh at me. And it was just tough. It was just tough. Hasn't come up in a while. But I think about that from time to time. It came up yesterday. And I honestly 100% believe this. Because of those circumstances, because of where we had to move first and kind of what we were doing and where we were living, the fact that we still had this house, I believe that because of that, we became foster parents sooner than we would have otherwise. And at just the right time, God brought Layla Lofton into our home to be a part of our forever family. And I would have owned that house for 100 years if it meant bringing Layla Lofton into our lives. And so we are here. I wanted this. God wanted this. He sent us over here so that we would become foster parents, bring this baby girl into our home, and adopt her a year later. And then we ended up here 9.5 years later than I would have wanted. But I would not have traded one moment of this journey to have gotten to this destination quicker. And so I pray, I am confident that he hears. And if I pray confidently, knowing that he hears, the times that what his answer seems to be unsatisfactory, I trust because I'm confident that he hears. I'm confident that he wants the best for me. He has a better idea than the one that I'm praying for. Verse 16. If you see any brother or sister commit a sin that does not lead to death, you should pray and God will give them life. I refer to those whose sin does not lead to death. There is a sin that leads to death. I'm not saying you should pray about that. All wrongdoing is sin, and there is a sin that does not lead to death. We know that anyone born of God does not continue to sin. The one who was born of God keeps them safe, and the evil one cannot harm them. We know that we are children of God and that the whole world is under the control of the evil one. We know also that the Son of God has come and has given us understanding, so that we may know him who is true. And we are in him who is true by being in his Son, Jesus Christ. He is the true God and eternal life. Dear children, keep yourselves from idols. So that's where the passage in the book ends. And it ends really strangely. Dear children, keep yourselves from idols. We haven't talked about idols at all. It hasn't come up at all. And I don't know how many of you guys grew up in the 80s. But it didn't matter what the speaker was talking about. Didn't matter what the topic was. It all ended the same. Anybody? Don't do drugs. Didn't matter what the topic was. Don't do drugs. I mean, we're talking about all these other things. Hey, don't do idols. We say, like, listen, if you find somebody and they're sinning, you should pray for them and God will give them life. And then he says this really complicated thing about the sin that doesn't lead to death, which I promise I will come back to briefly. Again, let's not get lost in the weeds of that. Hey, there is this, they pray and they'll give them life. And here's the thing that we know. If you've got God, you're not going to keep being a sinner. There's an evil world out there. He says there's an evil world. The evil one seems to be all on it. But you know who's going to keep you safe? The one will. Jesus is going to keep you safe from all of that. You're not going to be bound up in the evil anymore. You don't have to worry about all of that. You get to live a different life. This life is found in Jesus. And you can approach him with confidence. And because you can approach him with confidence, you can live a life. You can live a life that honors him. This is now what you get to do. They knew 2,000 years ago the world was broken. Seemed to have a evil. But you can have life in it. You don't have to fall into it. And it's not because you're going to have some special knowledge. It's going to be because Jesus protects you. He watches out for you. He protects you. And because of that, you don't have to live a life of sin anymore. And you get to live a life that honors God. And we get so caught up in theological debates about what happens to when a Christian sins. Well, it says you're not going to be a sinner still if you're following Jesus. And what does this mean? What if you do keep sinning? Like, we get so caught up in that we lose sight of just a couple of really basic principles. This is the life God has called us to, one that is honoring to Him, one that is free from sin. This is what He's called us to, which is a good and great thing. And Jesus Christ, He protects you. Now, the sin that leads to death thing, I intentionally waited until the piano person came out so that we just can talk about it really quickly. I'm not trying to. This is a controversial deal. It's kind of mentioned a few places. People like to debate it. One of the things that's talked about is, the unforgivable sin, blaspheming the Holy Spirit. There's lots of different ways this is used. I've become convinced of this, and I'll just give it to you. We can debate it at another time if you would like. Is that really this unforgivable sin, the blaspheming of the Spirit, it's this idea of rejecting where Jesus came from. That Jesus was sent by God and had the Spirit, and then the Pharisees were talking about he was from the devil, had the devil in him, had a demon in him. A rejection of who Jesus is and who sent him. That's the sin that leads to death. And again, if we think about it and who he's talking to, he's shooting again at the Gnostics here. They say Jesus didn't become a person, and they say that the God's not the real God. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about this idea that you're just completely rejecting the person of Jesus the way that they are. I'm talking about these ordinary sins. Let's pray for each other so that we can have life, so we don't have to be bound by that anymore. We're not under that control anymore. The evil one is there, but Jesus, He protects you. And when you struggle, when you see someone struggle, you can pray about it. And God will give them life. And you can do that because you can approach God with confidence. You don't have to be nervous. You don't have to wonder if He hears, because I can approach Him with confidence. Why? Because I know Jesus. And that's where life is. It's been a wild couple of months for us as a family. It's just been wild. Just a little bit over 2 months ago when we found out that Heidi's dad had passed away, and we've had a couple of memorial services for them. We were out of the country for a little bit. Heidi started a new job. There's been some things that just kind of some personal things that have gone on, some brokenness in some relationships, some real hurt out there. It's been a real unsettling time for us as a family. And when the world feels unsettled, it just starts to feel like the world underneath you is just, I don't know where to step. It feels like at any point I'm going to fall. I'm going to get hurt. But over these last couple of weeks, I feel like it's kind of been galvanizing to me. Where I've got my feet, where I'm standing, is not on the instability of this world. Because this world is not where life is. It's where I currently live, but it's not where life is. Life is found in Jesus. And no matter what happens in this world, I can approach Him with confidence and ask Him. And I'll know that He hears. And because of that, I can live a life that honors Him. Let me pray. God, I pray that we would not be people who put our confidence in how good we are, how much we know, how much smarter we are than someone else. And certainly not in some deeper knowledge that pulls us away from you or from your Son, Jesus Christ. But God, I pray that our confidence in this life and the next would be in your Son, Jesus. And that because of that confidence, God, we can know that right now that you're hearing us. These are not words being spoken in a room that just die somewhere. The very ear and heart of God are being moved right now. And God, I pray that we would walk and live with that confidence. And as we walk through an unstable world, that we would know that your Son protects us. And that in the way that we live would honor you. And it's in your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Thanks again for joining us on our sermon podcast, and you can learn more about us at thegrovechurch.org. And if you go to thegrovechurch.org/connect, there's a form you could fill out. Just let us know that you've been listening. And if you want to dig deeper on some of these topics that we cover in our sermon podcast or just in other issues of dealing with culture or theology, those kinds of things, you can check out our Cultivate podcast, which is on the same feed, however you found this particular podcast. So again, this is Charlie, the lead pastor at The Grove, and thank you so much for joining us.